Well, hello again and welcome to another episode of the Hyperion Adventures podcast. I'm Tom. As always, I'm sitting right next to my gorgeous, super intelligent, and Disney wonder cast and crew loving wife, Michelle.
You're so sweet. Hi, everybody.
So good to have you join us today. Yes, we are back with you. We are recording this episode on Friday, March 20th, 2020.
What?
We are recording early because that's how excited we are to talk about our recent trip.
Yeah, I mean, it was an amazing adventure. Not the cruise we expected, but a wonderful cruise all the same. And yes, we are excited to talk about it.
Yes, we've been champing at the bit to get to this episode probably about halfway through our cruise, but definitely over the last several days. So we wanted to get it to you as soon as we possibly can. And we'll get more to that here in just a couple of moments. But we appreciated that you joined us today, especially considering everything that's going on in the, obviously in this country, but in the world right now. We want to be here. We know it's tough out there. We know that everybody is going through some trying times. There's a lot of people who are scared out there. There's a lot of very much concern. We want to hopefully be there for you to kind of, we probably won't talk a lot outside of what's going on in this episode about what's happening with COVID-19. But we want to kind of be there to kind of, be that oasis away from
distraction.
Everything that's going on out there. It seems like all the stories are really tough. You can't really get away from it anywhere. Right. And obviously there will be some mention of that during this episode today. But for the most part, for the next several weeks and whenever you want, you can go back to past episodes of ours. We kind of want to be that positive, fun distraction, like as you said, Michelle, to get you out of that. And we hope we can be a little bit of that today, but also in the future for sure.
Well, we're really hoping that if you are able to be at home or working from home or, for whatever reason you're at home and you want to listen to some of our podcasts, we want to be, like you said, honey, we want to be there for you and, hopefully share some fun things.
Right. It's a great chance if you haven't heard some of our episodes, if you joined us midway through our run. This is episode 95. Well, it's really more than that because we have some episodes that are kind of not really counted within the group, our D23 Expo episodes or whatever. I don't really count as part of our traditional episodes. Sure. So, but there are plenty of episodes you can go back and take a listen to if you're just looking to kind of fill the time, distract yourself, whatever the case may be. But mostly we want you to know we love all of you out there. We are here for you. If you want to talk to anybody, if you want to email us questions, whatever the case may be, we're here for you. Also, we want to say how much we appreciate that while we were away on this cruise, so many of you reached out to us, whether you're concerned about how we were doing.
I know.
When we were thinking,
that was so touching.
When we were thinking about all of you back here at home. So we wanted to thank you very much for that and let you know that we love you guys very much, and we really, really appreciate it.
Yeah, that was really incredible to get all that kind of a response. We really appreciate it. While on the cruise, we got some media information, from time to time. Sometimes satellites were out, so we wouldn't get some of the all the stations, and they don't have a lot of channels. They have a lot of movies, just not a lot of channels, so we would see sometimes BBC World information, so we'd get broader perspective of everything going on in the world. And then other times we'd have more like CNBC, so we knew what was going on with the stock market a lot of times and how things going on were affecting that, which we know right now isn't a positive. Although a positive spin is it's a sale day in the stock market.
I guess you can look at it that way. But seriously,
just twisting it.
Yeah, but seriously, I mean, unfortunately, we couldn't contact back to a lot of you because there were some time we actually cheaped out a little bit on the internet. We could have, paid for more internet and been online more and responding to you all more. But we were thinking we were going to be in many ports that we weren't in, and we were thinking we could connect with people and tell you what was going on there. But we were unable to do that. We'll get into more of that along the way. But just again, we just want to really tell you how much we really appreciate you all and you reaching out to us. And so
on with the show.
On with the show. Yes, you can reach us on social media. We are on Twitter, if you don't know already, at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. And if you ever want to email us, you can always hit us up at Hyperion Adventures Podcast at gmail.com.
Yeah, and while you're there, sign up for our newsletter.
Yes, well, on our website, you can sign up for the newsletter. We've had 2 weeks off. We're kind of playing catch up on everything.
I got very distracted here. I have to be honest with you, and this is a sidetrack here, but I'm seeing you're working with your notes electronically rather than paper, and I just noticed that.
Yeah.
And I think while you're talking, I'm like, oh wait, he's doing this differently.
Yes, I'm old school usually. I usually have paper notes, mostly because I like to jot a couple things down on them as I progress through this. Unfortunately, though, while we've been away, our printer has run out of ink, and so I'm not running out to the store today. I don't even know if they have ink. Is it going along with the toilet paper? I don't know. So I'm doing this electronically. So yes, I've thrown Michelle off.
I know. So sorry, I didn't mean to be distracted by your comments.
I'm very distracting today. Anyway, yes, the best place to listen to our show is on our website, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. And while you're there, please sign up for the newsletter. We have some interesting things coming up, including next week's episode, which I will get to later on in this show. Lots of stuff for you today, but the main thing is going to be talking about, yes, our Panama Canal Disney cruise recap. We've made you wait long enough. Let's get to it. So yes, here it is, our promised recap of our westbound Panama Canal Disney cruise aboard the Disney Wonder. Yes, I know that many of you said you're looking forward to this, and especially with what's all happened. So it's going to be very interesting. Now, we originally talked about this over the last few weeks, that once we get to this episode, we were not going to break it down day by day.
That's right. We made that promise.
Highlights. Well, we're breaking that promise now.
Well, no, we're not completely going day by day.
We're not going day by day.
Don't turn us off now. No. Trust us. I will keep him on track.
We're not going to be like, on day 2, we woke up and it was a sea day. So we went out to Cabanas and had breakfast. I had the eggs Benedict. We're not doing that. Okay. But there were some crucial things that happened during this cruise as things progressed, on the ship, but also back in the States that kind of shaped how this voyage, ended up progressing. So we kind of wanted to tell the story of this cruise along with how we found out things along that. And that is going to definitely have some days that we're going to have to go over to discuss the adventure that we were on as we go through it. So we'll start off with, we flew to New Orleans on March 4th, arrived in the evening, explored, had great food, as you'd expect with New Orleans. We're not going to touch much on that, but we eventually got to our cruise date, which was on Friday, March 6th. So since COVID-19 concerns here in the U.S. were starting to grow a little bit prior to that, we received lots of letters from Disney Cruise, saying that they were going to, not allow some people who visited other countries on the ship. And also they were going to be checked as we went in. And yes, we were. Before we went on the cruise, every passenger had their temperature taken. One, they had to fill out a questionnaire, which you have to do a lot of times. But they wanted to make sure you weren't showing any symptoms, and they wanted to make sure you didn't have a fever. So we all had our temperature taken before boarding.
Right.
So we went through that, cheered, yay, our temperature is good. Went through and then got on board, and everything was pretty much normal. It was a great first day on the cruise. Second day was a regular sea day. That was Saturday, March 7th. Then we went to Cozumel. That was a pretty much normal day. We had an amazing shore excursion there. We'll talk a little bit more about that as we progress through this episode, but it was a pretty normal day. The next day started when things started to go a little bit weird for us.
Just because of weather.
Well, yeah. Well, there was a couple things that happened, but day 4, which was Monday, March 9th, we pulled into Grand Cayman. And the first thing I came out of the restroom. I'm like, do you smell smoke? We're like, what's the smoke smell today? I open up the balcony door and look out, and there's this giant fire going on right in the middle of Grand Cayman.
Right. Not by our ship, but on the island.
It's a tendering port, so we were well away from it, but there was all this smoke blowing out through the bay. And our Captain Henry, came on and informed us that there was a fire in the city dump, this giant fire. It's horrible. I'm laughing about it, but it's horrible. But it was just kind of such an odd situation. Meanwhile, as we were sailing there, over the first few days of the cruise, the seas were not high seas, but they were, choppy. They were a bit rough. There was some pretty high winds out there. And because of that, our excursion that we had planned in Grand Cayman, which we were going to go and swim with the stingrays and do some snorkeling or whatever, because of the high winds, they couldn't really put the boats out there. So that was canceled. So rather than tender into the port, we decided to just kind of stay on board. Little did we know that staying on board on that day meant we were going to get off the ship again.
Who would have known back then?
Yes.
I know.
Well, but we'll get more into that. So, we made, the day was fine. People went off on the cruise and we had their shore excursions that were canceled and enjoyed their stuff. Right. We stayed on, had a pretty nice normal day on board the ship. It was good. And that night was when things started to go a little more weird for this cruise. Some interesting things happened. We woke up the next day and if you've ever been on a Disney cruise, there's a channel you can turn on and you can kind of see where the ship's been, where it's going, lots of information, what's going on, what the weather's like, what the speed is, and I noticed as I got on there, I'm like, we have looped all the way back to Grand Cayman and turned back around. I'm like, why did we do that? What happened that we need? Were we avoiding a storm or something?
I know. I was thinking, are we pacing to be right on time for Panama Canal? Maybe we'd gone too fast or something,
Well, apparently, again, Captain Henry came, we heard a lot of this sound, by the way, throughout this cruise.
I get chills hearing that still.
And normally when you hear that, it's just usually like the cruise director giving the entertainment schedule for the day or whatever the case may be. Well, we got a lot of that during the day. And this was another one where Captain Henry came on.
Well, and we should point out, too, that when that sound goes off, you can hear it in the hallways, on the open decks, or you can turn on your TV and you can hear the announcements. Otherwise, they're not broadcasting in your cabin because they realize that people could be taking a nap, or you have kids and they're trying to settle down or whatever. So they don't broadcast. But not on this cruise.
We had several announcements in our cabin on this cruise, which was fascinating.
So that's when the cabin says, I'm really sorry to be coming into your cabin, but you do need to listen to this announcement.
Yes. So anyway, Captain Henry came on and said that apparently there had been a medical emergency on the ship the night prior. Because we were in rough seas and because the winds were kind of blowing, the Coast Guard couldn't come in and airlift this passenger off. So from what we understand, and we don't know any of the details of this because it's their own private concern. Right. We're not going to dig into it or whatever. But from what the captain told us, they had to perform some sort of surgery on board the ship.
Life-threatening situation.
Yeah. They said that they saved the passenger's life. They had to go back to Grand Cayman to get that person off the ship.
And I'm not sure if the surgery was on the ship. That one I tend to disagree with you and your mother. But anyways, it doesn't matter.
I'm just telling you what he said. And whether it's truth or not, that is what he said. Whether that, obviously for Captain Henry, English, I don't believe is his first language. He may have, altered, misspoke a little bit. But what he said was that they performed surgery on the ship. So, and I know that they can do that, limited, they can do limited things. I don't expect that this was something that maybe was, they weren't, doing brain surgery on the ship or whatever, but they may have been able to do a little something to at least stabilize them until we could get to port. Right. Okay. So anyway, unfortunately, the other thing that he said that because of this, because we had to turn around, because we lost like 7 or 8 hours of our sailing time, and because we have a very tight window to get into the Panama Canal, unfortunately, we were going to not be able to make a real stop in our next port of call, which was Cartagena, Colombia.
Right. And that, one, they had planned for that to have excursions, but it was also the time where some of the initial talent that was on the ship was going to disembark.
Well, we'll get to that in a moment.
Oh,
yes. We'll get to that in just a moment, okay? So what the deal was that, they said they tried to work with the Panama Canal, but it was either we hit our time or we may not go through the Panama Canal for another week.
Right.
So obviously they have to stick to that. So they said, okay, what we're going to do is just go to Cartagena. We're going to stop for about an hour or so and exchange some personnel and move on to make our scheduled window at the Panama Canal. So now we get to day 5, sea day, normal, just fine.
But wasn't that a funny situation?
Well, let's get to that.
Okay.
Sea day, day 5. Finally, that was just fine. Then we get to Cartagena on day 6, Wednesday. That was the 11th of March.
Right.
And like I said, we knew that we weren't going to be getting off Cartagena, so we just kind of took it activities around the ship. And as we were walking through the ship, I think we were in the lobby atrium. We noticed that one of the entertainment acts was there in the lobby with all their stuff packed. We assumed they were getting ready to get off.
Right.
And when we, a little bit later, we came back and we noticed they were getting back on the elevator and heading back upstairs.
Right. And they left their luggage in the lobby.
Well, no, they took it with them. They took it with them.
That's right.
That's how we know. They're not just heading up to grab something.
Right.
They're taking their luggage back up with them to their cabin. So, we went and we're like, okay, that's a little odd. What's going on here? So once again, at about 3 p.m. that day, yes, Captain Henry comes on again and he tells us, the Cartagena authorities, out of an abundance of caution, this is something we heard many times throughout the trip as well, an abundance of caution says, had a problem with anything COVID-19 or anything, but just out of abundance of caution, they weren't going to allow anybody to board our ship. So this,
or to come off our ship.
Well, it was mostly, he didn't say to come off. He said to board our ship. It was what he really said. So how much we were getting on that, I don't know. But he did definitely say that no one was going to be able to board our ship. So we suddenly had no new entertainment coming aboard this ship. And since we weren't going to hit another port that we were actually going to stop at for 6 more days, well, this set the entertainment staff into quite a frenzy at that moment.
Right. And I mean, one of the things too, if you've ever cruised that you probably know, when you're in a port day, there's not a lot of activities. They want you to go out. They want you to have a good time at the port, or more accurately, they want you to go on an excursion at the port, and so they don't really have a lot of activities until after the time to get back on the ship goes. So on port days, very little bit of activity. And then it's not till, again, the evening where they have the entertainment. And then the next time there's a sea day, then they fill up with a lot of activity. But since we weren't stopping at Cartagena's and we knew that much, they had to suddenly come up with, that was in essence a sea day to us because we weren't going to get off.
Right.
And so they had to come up with activities of that day. And then you throw into it now the new entertainment not coming on for that night's entertainment and days later.
Right. So if you've ever been on a cruise, you may know this, or if you've never been, what happens is a lot of times they'll have an entertainer come on. He'll do an act or two, and then we'll reach a port and they'll kind of swap with another entertainer who will come on and do an act or two.
Right.
This happens a lot. They couldn't do that with this port. So now we had the same entertainers on for pretty much the rest of the cruise.
And some of them, I guess, couldn't perform again.
Yeah, I don't know what the deal was with that, but a lot of them did put an extra effort, and we'll talk a little bit about that in the future. But what happened next is that our cruise director, Ashley, who is wonderful, came on and said that she talked with the cast, the Disney Wonder cast, and the technical staff that puts on these shows, and they told her that they could quickly turn this around and suddenly do Frozen, a musical spectacular, which wasn't scheduled for a couple more days, put it together in about 2 hours. It would take them about 2 hours to get it together, but they could do it. We could get it on, and we would have we'd have a show that night because there was somebody who was supposed to come on that was going to do a show that night.
Yes.
And they couldn't come on. So they had to think fast on their feet. They did. Credit to all them. And they put on Frozen, a musical spectacular. It was amazing. I don't know how they put it all together. I know they do the show on every cruise, but it's still, there's there's a lot of, you still have to kind of rehearse it. They do so many shows on each of these that they still need to go through it with the technical staff, with the lighting, with the stage settings, with the costumes, all this stuff. They got it on. There were a couple of glitches within the show, but it was spectacular. We loved it, and we're very appreciative of that.
Right. I mean, it's crazy. I mean, like you said, I mean, the setup, like they said, takes 2 hours, and they didn't have a lot of not advance notice of it. It's not like they knew in the morning, okay, we're not going to get, the entertainment on board. They learned this about literally 2 or 3 hours before showtime was going to start. And so they really had to, try to figure out, what are we going to do? And then when the technical people especially said, yes, we can do it, we just need a little buffer of time. So they changed some of the show start times to accommodate that. But that's crazy that they could do that. I mean, they, even though they do the performance on each cruise, it had been a while since they had done the last one, so.
Yeah. I mean, they're not planning on it.
Right.
I mean, they were planning on having a night off. The cast was planning on not having to do anything that night, to flip that around and be able to put on a great show for all the guests that were on board was amazing. And this is just the start of all the amazing things that the cast and crew did throughout this cruise. So that was fantastic. By the way, I also had to, once hearing the announcement, I had to quickly go back to the room and change into my hashtag Real Man Love Frozen t-shirt for the show, because I was going to, I'm not going to that show without that t-shirt on. So I was thrown for a little bit of a loop, not nearly the loop they had, but I had to be ready for that. So anyway, that's silly, but we move on.
No.
So the next day, we do hit the Panama Canal when we're supposed to. It's day 7, Thursday, March 12th. That may be a kind of an interesting day that you at home probably will note as an interesting day. We woke up in the morning. I went up to get some coffee to get ready for the Panama Canal, sit out and watch the interesting day. And I noticed when I went upstairs that the beverage station where I get my coffee, suddenly I couldn't go up and get my coffee. They had people serving you at the coffee station. I'm like, that's interesting. And then I looked into Cabanas, and yes,
which is their buffet.
And all of a sudden, all the servers were, instead of being on the outside of the buffet, were on the inside of the buffet. And yes, they were serving everybody. So once again, and a couple hours later, we heard this.
In our stateroom.
Yes, Captain Henry came on once again, and he said this was a fleet-wide mandate to help protect guests against the possible spread of COVID-19. He did say no cases on board that we know. This is just, out of caution, an abundance of caution. They wanted to make sure and do this. So if we spent the rest of the cruise, if we ever went anywhere you went, you could not serve yourself. It was served by the staff members, again, putting them at a crazy amount of more work than they're normally used to, and no port days for them to get a little bit of a breather in there for guests to be kind of off the ship as well. So,
and just also the flow, like when you go into the buffet, so they usually have the buffet, it's a relatively large room. They have 2 entryways. And I'm not talking like a table that has 2 sides. I'm talking about 2 entryways into a room. And on both halves of those rooms is a full buffet, duplicate of the other side. And so now, in order to have enough servers, they had to consolidate to one side only, and yet still handle the same number of passengers going through there and, moving about in that area, trying to figure out, what do I want from the buffet? And they managed it, and it was surprising because, you would have thought things were going to be always congested, and they really weren't. They did a great job moving things along.
The crew on these sailings always bust their hump, every single sailing. They were ridiculously busting their humps to get us through this, to have us have a wonderful experience as we went through this. And it just, the workload increased every day, yet they always had a smile on their face. We're going to talk a little bit more about that as we go on, but it was pretty incredible. Anyway, so we were going through the Panama Canal that day. And as I did, mention, that's when everything everything started to happen within the States. And we were getting some information back on some of these news channels. We actually went to, we were invited to a stateroom party that some friends we had met on our eastbound transatlantic cruise back in 2016 invited us on. So we went into there and, we would go outside, watch the Panama Canal, go inside and get a little bit of this news of the insanity that was starting to happen within the U.S. with the the growing of the COVID-19 concerns within there was more news as the day progressed. Major sporting groups calling off or suspending or postponing their seasons or whatever the case may be. Finally, the Disney parks closing. And eventually Disney Cruise Line saying that they're going to end up canceling their next several cruises and going on hiatus for a while. So we were totally enjoying the Panama Canal. And that's where we were on this cruise for a large part of the reason we were on this cruise. But we were obviously also distracted by the news that was coming from home. So it was really, really a kind of it was a cool day, but a bizarre day and a sad day at the same time. It was really odd.
Yeah, it was odd. I mean, it was sad. Like you said, I mean, getting the news of, the parks closing, the cruise lines closing. And then, as you're getting that news, that the crew is hearing this because it's, again, in every room, you're going to hear this information from the captain. And for them, it's like, what happens with us now? So you have to appreciate that, just like some people here are concerned about their jobs or are suffering from unemployment as a result of this. That's what these people who mainly come from other countries are concerned about too. And so then, you start feeling like, oh man, I feel bad. I mean, I'm on vacation and this is going to end for me, but we don't know what it's going to mean for them. And so like you said, it was kind of like having a cloud over the day, even though it was a pretty spectacular day in Panama Canal in terms of weather and everything. It was sunnier than usual. It's hot, but it wasn't oppressively hot. And we had, like you said, we're at a party that had an amazing deck and we had great views, but it was this underlying current of news that was coming through that just like, wow, this is really starting to grow and grow quickly.
Right. And obviously we were still mostly in the bubble. We didn't, get the new, like you back here in the States and around the world, we're getting, to a much greater degree. And I'm sure it was, really, horrific in many regards, what was happening on those days. But we did get a piece of it just to know we were kind of in touch. We were in kind of a bubble, but we were noticed what was going on. So, again, we were still on vacation. Yeah. So we were still in a great position. I'm not trying to, say that we were suffering or not. We weren't. We were having a wonderful time, but it did kind of just trying to stress that it was kind of an odd day for what was the big day of the cruise.
Right, exactly.
So the next couple of days we were scheduled to do sea days after Panama Canal. So there was it was pretty typical for that. We didn't have any, we did have some announcements, but none of the weird announcements. Matter of fact, one time we were in the dining room having lunch and we heard, and everybody kind of tense, like, what is it? And the captain Henry comes on and says, I have no bad news for today. Everybody applauded. Yay! It was kind of it was a weird situation, but kind of funny at the same time. But the interesting things about those next few sea days is we obviously went from the Atlantic to the Pacific. And, if you'd asked me before this cruise, okay, you're going to spend several days sailing sea days or whatever, where is it going to be a little more rough? And where is it going to be like calm, flat, smooth? I would have said, well, the Caribbean's always smooth and the Pacific's always, well, not always, but it can be kind of rough from time to time. It was completely the opposite. For whatever reason, there was a storm going through the Caribbean, a lot of wind. So it wasn't terrible, but it was a little bit bumpy, a little bit rough. We got to the Pacific for the first 4 days, sea days. It was as smooth as could be. It was like glass practically out. It was lovely.
Right. Now, granted, like you said, those were then planned sea days.
Right.
So the entertainment that they had during the day planned was what they had during the day planned. The challenge they had is the entertainment for the night.
Right.
Again, they didn't have, because one of the performers actually was going to be doing multiple shows. They had different themes. So they suddenly didn't have just like one missing performer. They had multiple missing performers in essence to cover multiple days. And now they've moved up the Frozen show. So that's not available anymore for these C days, which it would have been. So it was just, they were just scrambling to try to come up with ideas of how to provide some entertainment. And, they did have some other interesting things threaded throughout the cruise that they added on, because they did have access to other films and things to build. But, where they like to have like one main show of the night, that's where they started having some challenges.
Yeah, they did fill in with a couple movies here and there. The magician, the comedic magician who was on that couldn't leave when he was supposed to leave, actually came up with a couple more shows and did a couple more things and helped out, pitched in wildly. The big night was, though, the Disney Wonder cast. And again, they stepped to the plate so many times on this. I think they called themselves Wonder 40. So I'm going to go with that. Wonder 40 put together this on the fly, a cabaret show that they, they didn't really have time to, they kind of, they were
going to do a very limited thing for the adults only.
Yeah, like in the Azure Lounge. They were going to put it in the small lounge, not on the full Walt Disney, theater stage. So they kind of had to block it all out and everything, just with a day or two to get it done, add some more songs. And it was, it wasn't perfect, but it was an amazing show. They came out, they did a variety, and they had every cast member got their chance to shine. They did a variety of Disney songs. They did 4 from Frozen 2, which, hashtag Real Men from Frozen. I love that. They did a couple from Mary Poppins Returns. They did some from Bedknobs and Broomsticks. Even Finding Nemo, the musical, they did a couple songs from that, which was so cool.
Right.
And I mentioned to Michelle as the show is going on, because some of these songs it was cracking me up, especially because of the episode that we released last week. I'm like, I think they listened to our episode, because this is basically Disney songs that made us cry come to life.
Exactly. Yeah, it was, like you said, was it perfect? No, but it was impressive in the sense that here's a cast that, again, they had to miss out on a day off to do Frozen unexpectedly. And here's another night that they weren't supposed to have to do a big show. They were thinking later, days later, they were going to do this little mini thing for the adults only. And now they're doing a family show and performing songs and things like that. And if you think about it, it's not just, okay, somebody's going to come out and sing a song and then the next person's come out. They had to have the timing. They had to have the lighting going correctly and have a flow to it so that it was entertainment.
There are multiple. There were so many cast members there singing. There were a multiple of mics for the technical staff to make sure they're on at the correct time and everything.
Right.
There was a lot to do with this. It was a relatively simple show, but it really wasn't. And especially when it's not something they do all the time.
Right, exactly. So, it was impressive that they had to then, it was coming up with, again, another planned big show for the night without really much available to them.
And they did an amazing job.
Yeah.
It was one of my favorite nights of the whole cruise, and mostly because I just love all those songs.
Right.
But it was just unique. It was cool to see the cast go out there and shine and do so well. They were out meeting guests afterwards in the hallway outside the Walt Disney Theater. Just really, really special night. So as I said, those 3 days they were outside of the entertainment at night. They were pretty standard sea days. They had lots of stuff going on in trivia, all the usual stuff you would expect on a sea day on the cruise. Then we get to day 11. Which was Monday, March 16th. And, well, round about noon, we heard this again. And Captain Henry came on and told us that although we would have been allowed to stop in Puerto Vallarta and Cabo San Lucas, which was our last 2 ports, out of an abundance of caution, they've decided they'd be bypassing those ports as well. So we were not going to be hitting land again until we reached San Diego at the end of the cruise.
Right. So that means automatically then, again, 2 more sea days. Mm-hmm. So 2 more days of full-on activity. Like, they have to do a variety of things that kids would like, things that tweens, adults, and a lot of different tastes from adults of what they want to do. And it's like, okay, 2 more days that they have to do a full-on amount of planning for. And again, they were expecting in Puerto Vallarta to do a swap out for the shows. They thought, okay, we're going to catch up on the person who didn't board in Cartagena's and let that person board at Puerto Vallarta. And now instead, again, no new talent coming on. And what do they do next?
Yeah, so that was a big deal. But also, again, for a lot of the crew members who are, part of the dining staff, a lot of times they rely on some of these port days to some of them, none of them ever get a day off. They all work every single day, but sometimes they'll get, maybe they don't have to do lunch service or whatever because most of the guests are off the ship for a port day. Right. So they didn't get that. That wouldn't happen for them, unfortunately, on the better part of this cruise. Yes. So made them again, not only are they working, they're working more hours than they had to, but they're also having to do all this extra work because they're serving everybody. And yet they continued every single day, smile on their face. They're amazing. Well, again, we're really going to discuss that more as we move forward. So anyway, what we did find out also when Captain Henry came on is he told us that we would be arriving back in San Diego because we're bypassing those ports a day early. Now, you were given the choice of whether you'd like to stay on board until Friday or you could disembark on Thursday. So, we went to work on what do we want to do on that. And we came to a conclusion later on, but I won't get to that yet. But we also were told because of all of this, we were going to be receiving a port charge reimbursement. Yeah, for all the ports, which would happen anytime. Right. Anytime you miss a port, the port charges, port taxes, whatever, those will be reimbursed to you. We were also going to get a 10% refund on that cruise, which is really, really nice. And they also told us we were going to be getting a 40% off of a future cruise. And that is on top of the 10% discount you already get for booking on board. Basically, if we wanted to book another cruise with them, we were going to get a 2-for-1 offer essentially on that. And that is amazing by Disney to step up.
Two people for the price of one. Yeah, they weren't giving us two cruises.
No, not two. Well, it could have been, it's 2-for-1. I mean, I guess depends on if they were the same price, it could have been, 2 cruises for the price of one. Yeah. If they were the exact same price, but
Right. Yeah. I get what you're saying.
But yes, if it's a 50% off, but you can't take 50% off of multiple cruises. It was one cruise that you could do that on. So,
and they also said because people may get off the ship on the 19th, that they were going to, in essence, waive all the tips that would go out to
for the last day
for everybody,
whether you stayed on board or
for
left.
The 19th. Yeah, they said that they were gonna provide the tips anyways to the crew, but they weren't charging us for it.
Exactly. So they also gave out some free internet packages. Not a lot of memory. I mean, if they go by megabytes on there, they gave out some so people could more easily reach home or whatever. And they also opened up the phones for free calls to the mainland. So if you needed to make some travel arrangement changes, you could do that. So,
which is a crazy expensive thing normally.
Right. And, so credit to Disney for doing all that. They didn't have to. I mean, obviously you would expect they would do a little something. The 10% refund might have been enough. But to do all that stuff was pretty phenomenal. And everybody kind of got to work on booking that next cruise on board, including us. Yeah. Through our afternoon for a little bit of a loop as we're like suddenly scrounging to look for a cruise to book. As it turned out, we could have just booked the placeholder and it would have been fine. But we wanted to kind of get that cruise that we really wanted.
And some were selling out. So it was good that we did get what we wanted. Yeah. And the other thing too is that they opened up guest services to provide assistance to anybody who wanted to get assistance in changing hotel information reservations or, airline reservations. So they were there to help people do that as well. Even though they opened the phone lines and they gave some access to the internet free, they were also willing to help and do some travel arrangements with you.
Right. Exactly. So, again, credit to Disney for doing what they always do, which is step up and make it right, even if they don't necessarily have to make it right. At least not in my opinion.
Yeah.
They did things they didn't have to do for us. We had an amazing cruise.
Yeah.
Throughout this whole thing, they treated us so well. We had an amazing time. It was a fantastic vacation. So.
Right. And I think one of the things that I really want to point out is the cruise director and assistant cruise director were phenomenal. Yeah. First of all, and I won't go into detail, I won't steal your thunder here, but I just want to say that, Ashley and Mike were phenomenal and funny. Oh. These people were hilarious. And, you could tell, I mean, they were joking around too, but, like, oh my God, now I got to come up with plans. And I loved how they made a joke one day of saying, yeah, we just put a bunch of ideas in a hat and pulled out. All right. Okay, we're going to do this activity at 9:00 and then draw another one. Okay, well, let's do this one at 10:30. And, that they were joking. But the fact that they had to rely on each other and all the other crew members too, that, people who do activities as well, having to do additional ones, and again, it was already a long cruise. So you're figuring if they're planning trivia contests, they're used to, their typical 5 to 7 day cruise. And here, this is double that. So they already had to have double of everything that they would normally do on those things. And now additional sea days, 4 additional sea days. That's crazy to imagine what they had to come up with, and be creative. And it was impressive. And like I said, they were funny in how they were, sharing that information. They knew we were having some challenges and dealing with all the changes, and we knew they were having challenges with dealing with all the changes, and it was just kind of like one happy family.
Yeah, in an interesting way, that's what it ended up being. Credit again to them, and credit to most of the guests too, who were phenomenal about everything as well. I'm glad kind of that this was more of a veteran. A lot of the cruisers that were on this were more veteran cruisers. There were very few that had only been on either no cruises before or had been only on a couple.
Right. There was 299 new cruisers.
Right. So because they might have had a different feeling on this, but most people know things happen on board a cruise ship. And so they kind of, just went with it, and plus the fact that they were just so phenomenal about everything made it really easy to just go with everything that kind of happened on this. So day 12, which is when we should have been in Puerto Vallarta, we had a shore excursion plan there. We were going to get off the ship. We couldn't. That ended up being a pretty typical sea day. Obviously, they had to add a lot, as Michelle mentioned, to that one. Day 13, we were supposed to be in Cabo. We weren't going to get the ship off the ship on that day anyway, just because we've been to Cabo a number of times. And so we just kind of were, and it's a tender port. So we're like, do we want to fight to get the tender to go into someplace we've been several times, and we just decided we weren't going to do anything there.
For those of you who don't know, a tender port means you're not on a dock,
right?
So you're not just like where you can just step off the ship and be on a pier and go into town. This is you're in the water still, and a boat comes up to you and picks up 30, 40 people and drives them to land.
Yeah, I think it's a little more than that, but yeah, that's about what it is. It's a small boat comes up. They just circulate small boats back and forth. They're in a calm port. It's a calm bay, and everything. And even if there's wind, the ship will kind of twist to shield it, these small ships from the wind or whatever. But it is, obviously, as Michelle talked about, it's not just as easy as just walking off the ship and walking back on the ship. There are some steps you have to take. And sometimes, depending on what you want to do in the port, it's worth the effort. And sometimes, it's not. So we just planned on staying on board. And since some of the guests might be disembarking a day early, they moved up Disney Dreams on that day by a day. Again, moving, stepping forward, the whole cast stepping forward to make sure that everybody on board had a chance to see what is my favorite Disney Cruise Line show. Yeah. I love Disney Dreams, and it always wrecks me.
It's like a love story to Disney fans. It brings in many of the characters and the scenes, but it's based on a different, like a real person kind of character, not real life person, but not an animated person.
It's a wonderful story. If you ever get a chance to get on the Disney Wonder, I think it's on the Magic too. I'm not positive of that. Some of the shows, I forget sometimes which line I'm on, but I know it's been on the Wonder forever. I think since the beginning, as a matter of fact,
Yeah,
they've made some adjustments to it. They've made since we last saw it, they made some adjustments to it as well. I won't give it away, but they've done some different things to it, and it's just a phenomenal, wonderful storytelling. It's staged really well. It's a phenomenal show. But anyway, so also on that day, we had to decide by 10 a.m. which day we wanted to disembark.
Right.
They kind of needed to have an idea who was staying on board so they can, figure out the crew and who many are serving, who many are getting off, and just kind of let the port know how many bags were going off that day. So since Michelle works in the medical industry, she'd been in touch with her work for a couple of days, and they were saying that there was a chance she could be put on an automatic 14-day quarantine as stated by the CDC
recommendations. Yep.
So with that possibly being the case, we decided to go ahead and get that clock started as early as possible. As much as we wanted to stay on board for the full length of the cruise, giving her an extra day, if we wanted to get that quarantine done early as possible, we wanted to do it a day earlier. So we decided it's best to go ahead and disembark on the 19th. So that's what we did. We turned in our form, and that's what we ended up doing.
Yeah, it was interesting, and again, going back to the cruise director and assistant cruise director. So on a lot of cruises now, I think pretty much most that we've gone, even with outside of Disney, there's usually some kind of a show in the morning where they kind of give a recap of what's going to go on, even though you have other ways of finding out what's going on. There's like either a newsletter or an app or something like that. But most cruise lines do have this because they want to entice you to know what's going on so you can participate in things. And so it was just so funny that they came on the 19th and said, we don't usually do this on the day of disembarkation, but there are some people leaving the ship, but there are some people who aren't, and they were like, saying this has been just such the craziest
all sorts of new things
cruise.
that happened that they've never experienced before happened on this cruise.
I know.
They had to deal with. So
right, it's just really, really strange in that regards. But it was funny how they presented that.
Yep, exactly. So we get to disembarkation day for us, which was day 14. That was yesterday, Thursday, March 19th. We arrived in San Diego. There were several news teams waiting on the dock because I think that we are either the last or one of the last cruise ships that was kind of out at sea since the craziness has kind of hit. The Disney Wonder, by the way, informed the CDC, the Coast Guard, San Diego's local health authorities, and port authorities that there were no reported cases of COVID-19 on board. Right. As I've gotten to calling it, we were on the, quote, healthiest place on Earth.
Yeah. I mean, I could not believe, in addition to like what we mentioned earlier on, where we were not allowed to touch serving utensils, that they did that for us. But just constantly throughout the day, I believe it was maybe like every 30 minutes, it seemed like they were wiping down the handrails throughout the ship with disinfectant, doorknobs. Every door, you'd go by. I saw walls being wiped down because I know like kids sometimes like to run their hands along the walls. I mean, they were keeping that ship so clean throughout the entire time.
I'm going to get into this in a little bit more as we get through our highlights, but Disney was doing everything they could to keep this clean, but they do that all the time.
Yeah.
It's something that they may have taken an extra effort to do on this cruise. But we've been on many Disney cruises before. We are platinum cruisers. We've been on a dozen, or you've been on 17 cruises.
Yeah,
I've been on a dozen. They do this every single time.
Right.
So it's part of what sets Disney apart.
Right. I mean, I was talking to somebody at the bar. What? One of the servers there, and we were outside actually, and he was wiping down the table. It was already clean. I noticed that when I went to sit down. It's like, oh, this is clean. And he goes, oh, just give me a second. I'll get your order. He says, I'm just having to wipe down the tables. He says, we do that every 30 minutes.
Yeah, see?
And the other thing that he told me, and I saw it in 2 other places, so I know it was happening. So when you order something, you're just signing a receipt. It's charged to your room, to your cabin, but you do have to sign the receipt, and you can decide whether to tip more or not. They washed every pen between everybody who handled that pen. And, I mean, they had like a jar of them, but I saw this by multiple crew members that somebody would hand them, the signed receipt with the pen, and they were wiping it down, or they were putting it in a jar and wiping a bunch of them at one time. They each had their own little process, but yeah, I mean, they weren't kidding.
Yeah, they were serious about it, as they are on every cruise. I mean, they really are serious about their hygiene on Disney Cruise Line, more so than any other cruise line we've ever been on. That's why they continuously score super high whenever they get, kind of tested, whenever they go through and people judge them. They also are very high on their environmental concerns. We learned something that I didn't know. I think I heard it at some point, but I had forgotten about it, that even the fireworks they shoot on board, when they shoot these off, some of the, when you shoot fireworks off, there's some,
debris.
Leftover debris or whatever that comes out of these pyrotechnics. The pyrotechnics are the debris that comes off of them basically contains fish food to feed the fish. So, the environmental concerns, they are top of the line for virtually every cruise line, always on environmental concerns. No cruise ship is ever a perfect. It's not exactly the best thing for the environment. However, they do their best to make sure they can cut their carbon footprint as much as possible, which we really respect about Disney. Is
So I want to talk about some of the fun things we did too.
I want to wrap up the last day real quickly.
Okay.
We cleared immigration in the morning. This was something that you would have to do. Everybody on board had to clear immigration. That was a breeze of a process. Yeah. Ship started to disembark at about 12:30 in the afternoon on that Thursday. We got off the ship about 1:15 because they're only about, I don't even think it was, I thought maybe a third of the people were getting off. I don't even think it was that many. No. We flew off the ship. Really no problems at all. It was really easy for us. We were home by 2:30, 3 o'clock, something like that. Yeah. And thrilled about it, and just Michelle had to get some things worked out with her job and everything else, but we were excited to get this episode to you as soon as possible.
Oh yeah, we couldn't wait. And so it was that, like you said, that disembarkation was the most breezy I've ever seen. So we were glad about that.
Right.
I mean, I think maybe that was one of the good things about all this issue of social distancing and things like that. They were just like, let me see your passport. Okay, go.
Yeah, exactly. And we were sad to get off the ship a day early. Really, we wanted to stick around the whole time, but because of Michelle's work and some other things, we decided it was best for us to leave. But it did end up working out for the most part. And I'm sure everybody else that stayed on board had a great time on that last day. I don't know exactly what they did, how the process was getting off the ship this morning, but I know Disney, and I'm sure it was still as smooth as disembarking any cruise ship. When you're sad to finally be done with it, had to be.
So don't be too disappointed for it. As much as I myself would have liked to stay on longer because they were doing something I really wanted to do again, but we really only missed half a day because the actual last day that you get off, usually you're getting off very early in the morning.
By 8, 9 in the morning at the very latest.
Yeah. You're getting off the ship. So, we, like you said, we got off about 1:15, 1:30. So we only missed the afternoon and dinner.
Yeah, we had breakfast on lunch on board. We kind of checked a few things out and just kind of walked around the deck and just enjoyed ourselves for our last few hours that we could have on board the ship. So, but let's get to the highlights of our cruise. We've talked about the day-to-day, what went on, just so kind of give you that information of how the sailing progressed for us. But there were a lot of highlights that we, really haven't touched on throughout this episode that kind of happened on the cruise. And first, I have to start out with this because and we've touched on it many times throughout this so far. The biggest highlight of this cruise, first and foremost, is the entire Disney Wonder cast and crew. They were phenomenal. And now I know we've touched on this already throughout this, but I can't state it enough how great they were under significantly adverse situations for them.
Oh, I know. It was like I said, we were all at that point family, all going through some level of disappointment or some level of concern, what's going on, we're worried about ourselves and our family at home. They're worried about their jobs and their families in other countries and stuff like that. So despite that, they were always smiling, always showing appreciation. And I made it like my goal was to, as every time I saw somebody, was to say, "Oh
Michelle,
my God!"
You should have seen her on the last day, thanking every crew member that she came across for providing such a wonderful and breaking down in tears many times.
Every time, yeah. I mean, and these are people that like. You get to know your dining room servers because you see them every night. They come with you each and every night to the different dining room rotation, and a lot of times you'll see them here and there on different days with other types of food service. Whether they rotate where they go and stuff like that. But there's a lot of them that you don't see because they're not your regular servers, and so you may not have a connection with them. But despite that, I felt like we did all have that connection, that common connection, and I felt like I had to go tell anybody that I saw. I had to tell them how great they were, how much we appreciated their hard efforts, and what they did to make our vacation, or holiday.
Yeah. Holiday. That's something I'm not going to get into here, but that's funny. It's an inside joke for us. But if you're somebody listening who was on board, you might get that joke. But anyway.
Well, let me just.
Okay, go ahead.
So what they would do every morning on this morning show is they had somebody who would kind of give a word of the day, meaning they would take
they were English.
Yeah, they were British. They were taking a word that we use commonly and then saying what they would say. And so at the end, that's how they said it. They said, "You would call this a vacation. I call it a holiday."
Yes. And it sounds silly, but it was, as the days progressed, it was funny. I mean, again, the morning shows are great. We'll talk about that. But first of all, we have nothing but great things to say about the entire steering committee headed up by Captain Henry Anderson, despite, hearing this many times.
Yeah, I mean, Tom's not kidding. This is not like a bit or anything like that.
It is a bit, but it's true.
But when you said there was a hush over the room, that is an absolute truth. I remember now, we were at a cheese seminar and we heard that, and it was just starting. In fact, the people were just getting to their seats. People were talking. They hadn't started the presentation yet. And you hear that in dead silence.
Yeah. It was funny because, at the start of the cruise, people weren't listening as much. This happens every cruise. The captain, as I mentioned, the cruise director will come on and lay out pretty much the entertainment schedule of the day. The captain will come on somewhere around midday usually and tell you where the ship is, where they've been, what the weather's like, how far they've traveled, all this stuff. Usually,
very brief.
Yeah, I like to listen to it, but most people don't really pay attention. They just talk right through it. They don't care. As the cruise progressed, anytime that sound went off, everybody stopped what they were doing to find out what was going to happen next.
I know.
So that was kind of interesting, but he did a fantastic job of protecting us all, making sure the ship was good. The whole crew was fantastic, and he's the leader of that crew. He is the master and commander. He did a magnificent job of keeping us safe and having a great vacation at the same time. And part of that, having that great vacation at the same time, was because of, as we mentioned, the cruise director and the entertainment team. Cruise director Ashley Long and her assistant cruise director Mike Gibbons, their entire staff, they did just such an amazing job, and during incredibly difficult circumstances. They gave us a spectacular vacation despite being at sea for, 10, 11 straight days with no new entertainment acts coming on board throughout. It was so funny because you were mentioning them and doing the morning show, and you could just tell that they were they would tape morning shows and they would have to retape them because things would change, and they did the navigators and they'd have to change that too. And so you could just tell they were almost punch drunk by the end. It got to silliness, but they were entertaining and fun, and we totally understood why it was happening.
Exactly. And first of all, I have to say, those two together are hilarious.
Great.
They were hilarious. I hope any of you listening will have an opportunity to sail with the two of them. But I really think that they could make a career out of just being a comic act because they are so funny.
They don't
together.
need to just be the morning show on there. They could be like a radio morning show.
That's
is that
right.
What you're saying?
They could have been the entertainment.
And they were
They
night
were.
part
Yeah,
of
that
it.
is true. That is true.
There was a crew talent show, and they were part of the entertainment for that.
Exactly. And so, that they were funny and very enjoyable. And hopefully, as I said, some of you could experience their
if you ever get a chance and you look at your cruise, a lot of times people look at like, why do you ask who the cruise director is going to be? What does it really matter?
Right.
I'll tell you what, if either of these two, if I hear that they're going to be the cruise director or assistant cruise director or whatever on my upcoming cruise, I'm going to be super excited because they did such a great job. And that goes for the entire staff, the entire entertainment staff, the cruise director staff. They did a masterful job of keeping us entertained in really, really tough situations to try and find stuff for that. Our dining staff also was phenomenal. For us personally, we had Ali from Indonesia, Johan for Colombia, which I felt so badly for him because he was telling us a few days before that he's from Cartagena. He was excited because I believe his brother was going to come to the port and bring him some stuff and everything. And Cartagena got canceled and he couldn't, he's so close because we pulled into the port. It's so close to home and he couldn't reach it. I just felt so heartbroken for him. I know you felt the same thing, Michelle.
I certainly did. I really, really did feel bad for him. But let me tell you something special about him. So at one point in the cruise, I got a migraine. Now, I don't get migraines a lot, but I did this one day. And fortunately, it wasn't the whole day. It was really in the evening. And I said, I just don't think I can go to dinner because I just don't have it in me. It wouldn't be fun. Let me just stay in the room. I'll order something from room service or whatever. And so you stayed with me. You're a sweetie. You stayed with me. And we found out that they would actually bring dinner to the room. And so there I was in my jammies in the bed. We get a knock on the door. We're just thinking it's regular room service staff. I mean, not that it would matter, but and there was our regular server, Johan, bringing our dinner to us into the cabin, and I had already ordered some room service. So I had already had like a little bowl of soup, and he's like, oh, let me clear that away and let me get your dinner ready.
Is there anything else I can bring you? And I'm like, no, you've done
I know, it was crazy. And I remember, later on telling him, oh my God, first of all, you didn't make me feel stupid that I am in my jammies in bed and you're bringing me food in bed. And I said, but just that you were just so warm and ready to help and willing to help. And he's like, well, that's my job.
Right.
and it was just like, wait, no, that's way more than just being your job.
Yeah, over and above. They went over and above. I also want to talk about our head server, Lisa, who commanded her area so well, yet she'd come up and be very personable every time. We had some great conversations with her. We laughed a lot with her.
A lot.
We've been through, as we mentioned, many cruises, not only on Disney, but other cruise lines as well. And, the head waiter, the wait captain, whatever they may be, some of them are great. But we've very rarely found one as personable as Lisa was, and yet still in control of her area, of her situation. We'd look forward to every night to connecting with her a little bit. There was a couple nights we missed because she was busy, whatever the case may be. And unfortunately, we were hoping to see her right before we disembarked the ship. And we thought she was going to be up at the buffet at Cabanas.
At lunchtime,
and she may have been there, but we missed her. So if Lisa, we know we give you our card. If you're listening to this, thank you so much.
Thank you. Yes.
But she was phenomenal as well.
I want to see you in your green again.
Right. Yes. She loves that green. We had conversations about her little outfits she had to wear all the time because they're special. They're, normally in a 7-day cruise, there's certain outfits. Well, then they have to expand it to a 14, 15-day cruise. All of a sudden, these outfits really fly out of the closet they've never seen before. And
they're all themed. They have different themes, like
Vista
Night and
right.
Yeah, Frozen Night.
Yep.
And
every one of our servers, especially Ali, he was totally entertaining. He would sing he would do a little Mickey impersonations.
Yeah.
He is great. And he had fantastic dinner recommendations. Like he was nearly perfect on everything he recommended. Like we stopped a lot of times going against what I would wait. Like, what is he going to recommend? I like some dishes because it was almost always dead on right.
Yeah, absolutely. For every course. Yeah.
On there. So credit to them. And and like I said before, more than that, the entire wait staff, even I've talked about our main group that served us the most, but we were attended to by many, many different waiters, many different personnel from the wait staff at various times. And they all were there with a smile on their face, doing a great job when they had to work more than they normally have to, and that's impressive.
Like when somebody asks them for dulce de leche for their
Who
Mickey
would do
waffle.
Who would do that?
So, but in my defense, they offered that at the character breakfast. So they have a character breakfast, and they had Mickey waffles and a choice of toppings, and one of them was dulce de leche.
They always stepped up and did the best they could for you.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Yeah. So good. Entire crew was terrific. They worked tirelessly. And like I said, always had a smile on their face. They always were there with a quick good morning, hello, how's your day going? Every single time you passed anybody in the hallway. And again, we've been on different cruise lines. That is not the case. A lot of times they'll almost like look the other way because they don't want to interact with you. That is not the case with this crew. And I'm sure that is a good part to do with Disney and what they mandate. And the
officers.
But it's also the personnel that they bring in. They do a fantastic job of making sure that, they acknowledge you as you're walking through the halls, and it is a nice feeling. It does set them apart. Again, another thing that sets Disney Cruise Line apart.
Yeah, exactly.
So, again, you alluded to this before. The ship was spick and span clean. Crew always cleaning railings. The bathrooms, the public restrooms were spotless. They were always working on the ship throughout. We were I think it was actually when we were in Grand Cayman, and I'm not going to mention the cruise line, but there was another cruise, a big cruise line in port, and there was like rust on the side of the ship and all this, and I'm like, that is right there where you're looking at the difference between Disney and this other cruise line. That is one of the major differences that would not fly with Disney Cruise Line.
Well, that and the fact that Disney Cruise Line really is all inclusive. I mean, yes, there are things you can buy. So you can do, like a wine tasting or, some other activities that might cost a little bit more, but all your entertainment and everything is normally is included. And what we've seen with some of these other, cruise lines that may start at a lower baseline do start charging you for, they really, I don't want to say nickel and dime because that sounds, rude, but they do charge you for things that you would see on the Disney cruise and say, yes, I pay more for the Disney cruise, but that's covered. And I don't have to worry about making the decision. Do I want to go to a movie? Because it's IMAX and it's going to cost me $13.
Right. Yeah, that's not the case with Disney for sure.
Onward 3D free.
Yes. And again, you pay more for Disney Cruise Line, but
it's well worth the quality.
The quality is outstanding. So we can't say enough good things about this group. This cruise was full of question marks, difficult situations, yet the entire cruise always rose to meet and most of the time exceed those expectations. I don't know about you, but this cruise itself may have sold me that I may never want to cruise with another cruise line again. I was always, the right ports, the right price, and that still might be the case. But it's really that we cruised
It'd
last
have to be
year
a
with
draw. There'd have to be something that would draw our attention
because this really showed what Disney shone through in this one. The cast, the crew, they shined all the way through this, and the differences, again, we not recently, but a little over a year ago, cruised with another line
company.
And, we enjoyed that cruise fine. We had a good time on that cruise, but I don't know what they would have done if they were put in that same situation this one went through.
Right.
Amazing. I can't say enough great things about Disney Cruise Line.
Absolutely. But we have to talk about some of the highlights that we liked.
We're going to get to more of that. So.
I'm ready.
Yes. Well, first of all, I want to say that, and this may sound like it's our love letter to Disney Cruise Line. And yes, it is. And by the way, we're planning on trying to send a link to this podcast to the brass at Disney Cruise Lines just to let them know. We already filled out the comment card, but to let them know how we felt about this cast and crew and what a great job they did. And we hope that they will actually share this with them so they can know personally. They're in a tough situation right now, just like we are out here. They don't know what's happening with them either.
That's what I said. They don't know if they're going to have to go back home early or anything.
They just know they're going to have nobody on board the cruise ship. They don't know what they're doing. Yes, they're going to get some rest time or whatever, but they can't go home necessarily. They can't work necessarily. They are, if we talk to a few crew members that said they are going to pay them a living wage during this haul, so they don't need to worry about them getting paid or whatever. But it still is very up in the air.
Right.
So we, if we can share a little bit of this, let them know that we appreciate the job they did. We would like to do that. So hopefully we can get this to Disney and we can get them to them, and they can know even more than you going around and thanking as many as you can see for the job they did. They could also hear it through this podcast, and that's what we're hoping for. So yes, let's get to our other highlights. I'm going to start with the big highlights for me, and we mentioned them many times. The stage shows were phenomenal, as they always are. The Golden Mickeys, Frozen the Musical Spectacular, Disney Dreams, and yes, even the thrown together cabaret show. They were undefeated in making me cry every single show. Undefeated every single time.
I agree with you. They're great. And what was really fun this time over other times is, and we've seen some changes and upgrades in some of their shows before, or adding on new shows. But even with the Golden Mickeys, which has also been around forever, the newer elements that technology has brought to them, and how it really made you feel immersed in, while you're sitting there in the theater there, is really impressive. So I really loved how they really made those updates to make it even more of an experience for you. So that was great about the shows.
Yes,
too.
Absolutely. I also want to bring up Gavin Lee, who is the original Bert on Mary Poppins.
Yeah.
He came on and did a great stage show for us. He also did a Q&A. We got to meet him, got an autograph, got a picture with him. It was really nice. He did a great job. Wonderful show. One of my highlights for the cruise by far. He's excellent, and he's guy. You get him. I hope someday we get to interview him, because you just need to say Mary Poppins, and he'll just go for 10 minutes because he is
so interesting, so fun.
He was a lot of fun, and I'm glad we got to experience that when we were on board. I tweeted this out at the beginning of the when we first cruised, that we were lucky enough that Leslie Iwerks, from the Imagineering Story, joined us on this, and she shared with us many of her documentaries that she's done, including a Pixar story, and the Imagineering Story as well.
Right.
But then when things kind of went sideways and there wasn't things to fill in the gaps, she came through, said, I have more documentaries. She did one on ILM, Industrial Light and Magic that she just dropped in that was not scheduled. She gave them all the episodes of the Imagineering Story. It was only supposed to be show one originally, just to kind of so she could talk about it more. She did all these talks about her grandfather, her father, and herself, and the Imagineering Story and everything. She stepped up to the plate, did a fantastic job, and it was really wonderful to have her aboard our ship.
Right. As we mentioned, at a sea day, you need to have activities throughout the day and have a variety of them. And so that's where she really, came to the rescue of providing those additional shows during the day of, her documentaries and sharing everything that she had on her computer practically. So that was really neat. I think with her and Gavin Lee, I think they boarded from the beginning.
Yeah, they were aboard from the beginning.
Right. Even though some of their shows were planned to be at different times or whatever. But so we were very fortunate that we didn't have to wait for them to come on board somewhere, because they wouldn't have. But they really stepped up and provided some additional entertainment. So that was fun.
Yeah. And just privileged to have talents like them on board on this cruise. That's one of the things when you get these longer cruises like this, a lot of times you get some of these spectacular performers as added on value. And so, if you... obviously, I wouldn't suggest it necessarily as your first cruise. I think you should experience cruising first, because cruising is kind of a different type of vacation if you're not used to it. But if you've done a couple cruises, you may want to look into one of these longer cruises, because you get so much extra value out of it with things like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. So, but the other fun thing was, and we talked about this before our trip, was silent disco.
We did do the silent disco one day.
Yes. And I think it was more fun than I thought. I think you weren't expecting it to be anything. And
I had a blast.
It was.
And it's going to lead into my tip later, but it was such a good time. And if we don't know what a silent disco is, they give out these headphones. Yes. And they did sanitize all of them, which is kind of funny. And they give you out these headphones. There's a DJ out front, and you have 3 different channels on your headphones, and they're all playing different styles of music. So you put on these headphones, they cut the music actually in the room. All you can hear is the music in your headphones. And so there'll be people over here dancing to channel 2, which is, I don't know, 80s hits.
Right.
And then there's people over here that are listening to 2000 hits or whatever. So there's different people dancing in different things. They can be right next to each other, dancing to different songs or whatever. And since everybody's got headphones on, you could sing as loud as you want. You can dance, and no one knows the difference. And it's just a great time.
And everybody would hear the DJ though together. Like whenever the DJ would start talking, we all heard that with our music. But you could switch it anytime you wanted. And
it was a lot of fun.
It was
a lot of fun for sure. I also want to give credit to Dr. Richard Costanza, who also came through many times. He was on board mostly just to talk about the Panama Canal and a couple things about some of the ports we were getting. When we were running low on entertainment, he would just pull out talks about varieties. I think he brought a Vikings talk one day.
Right. Pirates in the Caribbean.
It had nothing to do with our cruise, but it was just to fill in some of the gaps that the entertainment and the cruise director staff had to go through. And so credit to him for doing such a great job and coming through in the clutch for that.
Right. Yeah. They were amazing guests to be on board to really add into more than expected entertainment. Yeah.
Other great things. We got to see Onward on board for the first time. We actually saw it again. We saw it twice. We loved it. This is our review of it. It's going to be a quick one. We enjoyed it. It is the best Pixar movie. It's not the best Pixar movie ever seen, but it's a blast. It's fun, and it will make you cry for sure, especially if you're me. But Michelle as well. It was. We totally enjoyed it, and I'll get to more on Onward in a little bit because you're going to get to be able to watch it here at home soon too.
Right.
But they had other movies too. We saw Frozen 2 again, which is good because I think we told you in our Frozen 2 review that we were distracted all the way through it and we enjoyed it, but maybe not as much as we really wanted to. And hashtag real men love Frozen. So we got to see it again in a real situation on the big screen, which was nice.
Right.
And
in 3D.
And I absolutely love Frozen 2 so much, right? And seeing it a second time, knowing kind of some things already about it, but also the fact that we didn't have that distraction that we had the first screening. It is a great movie. I love it so much, and I'm so happy that it's on Disney Plus now. We got home, I was like, it's on Disney Plus. Yeah, I get to watch it again.
I know.
So, but it was just cool to see that on the big screen, as was getting to check out The Rise of Skywalker on the big screen one more time.
Right.
We were lucky enough to do that. They also had screenings of films scored by John Williams, which was a theme running through that. So they were screening Jaws, Raiders of the Lost Ark, E.T., Close Encounters of the Third Kind, etc. So that was kind of a cool thing that they had running through the ship.
Yeah, I mean, it was neat knowing that was the common thread, that it was, John Williams scores. But then seeing some of these things that you may never have seen in the theater before.
Or haven't seen in, like E.T. We went and saw E.T. because that ended up being one of the shows one night. I hadn't seen E.T. in the theater in 40 years.
I never saw it in the theater, so it was my first time. So it was very cool. And that they had, and so it was interesting. These weren't obviously Disney films, but they did get special permission because of the length of the cruise to have, this being the, theme through the John Williams scores. So that was so cool.
That was cool. Really, really cool. We didn't catch them all. A lot of them were late at night, and I tend to get to sleep early. But we did catch several of them that we really wanted to see, including E.T., which was part of the show, and it was just really enjoyable and just nice that they're running that thread through that John Williams, who's done so many great scores.
Yeah.
You forget how many great ones he's done. The classic ones, but there's so many more that you don't even think of. That's amazing. We enjoyed the photo scavenger hunt that they would put out every day, which was they do this thing where they would take pictures of various locations throughout the ship, and you kind of had to walk throughout the ship and hunt them all down and write them out. You can enter in to win a contest. We never won, but we had a lot of fun. One, burning off the food, all the great food that we were eating by just putting on our steps, walking up and down the stairs and throughout the ship. But they also got increasingly tougher as the cruise went on.
Right.
So we had a blast with that.
Right. And, it's funny because I think I've even been on other cruises and saw a photo challenge and just disregarded it, thinking I'm not going to be taking, focus on taking pictures and submitting them to the contest, even though some people are maybe great at that. I know it's not my skill set. So when I first heard photo challenge, I'm like, I know I'm not going to take a worthy enough photo to win something, and then realize, oh wait, this is, like you said, it's a sheet of paper. It's like a scavenger hunt for pictures or, and they had different themes, whether it was, designs on the walls or actual pieces of artwork. And you had to find where, because they wouldn't give you much of it. And you had, what is that a picture of and where do I find it? And, like you said, going up and down every deck and across every deck and everything. And it was a great way to, exercise without being in the gym.
Mm-hmm. So it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
We really enjoyed it. We did work out some, but it was nice to be able to get those steps in without having to really work out and having some fun at the same time and hoping to win. We never won, but we had a good time finding all these things in unexpected places.
Yeah. And having a better appreciation.
Yeah. You get to see so much more of the ship when you do that. So it was really a great way to do that. And we had so many sea days to take advantage of it that we just had a lot of fun with it.
Yeah, we had extra ones.
I have one more thing, but I want to hear if you have any more highlights that you can think of right off the bat.
And I think I'd mentioned this in the past. We've done it on another one of the Disney ships, is taking the art of theming tour.
The art of the theme. Yeah.
Right. Art of the theme. And, that's a tour for adults only. And they really show you things related to more the artistic, either designing of the ship, how they incorporate art, how it helps with the flow of things. I mean, it was just amazing to me. And I don't want to give too much away, but how they utilize art and the structure of the ship, like especially in the adult areas, to kind of deter the interest for the younger passengers. And then how they, on the other side of it, the areas for the younger passengers, how they create an ambiance that makes them feel more comfortable and more invited, so that everybody is feeling good in the section that they're at, and they're not necessarily feeling like I'm missing out not being at the other parts of the throughout the ship. So, again, I don't want to spoil it, but it is really interesting if you take the time to do that. They're usually about 30 to 45 minutes. We were really lucky because the crew member we had was in love with the ship. Mm-hmm. You could tell her passion. And in fact, even she said, I could go on and on, but she was being paid to do the dress rehearsal for their talent show. And she goes, I really, took up the 45 minutes already.
Plus, I think bingo was starting and it was getting near the end of the cruise. So there was the big bingo
jackpot
that's that a lot of people wanted to get to.
That's true. So, but yeah, it's, that was a real highlight for me. I thought I knew a lot of the little nooks and crannies and a lot of the symbolism of it, but I learned a lot in that, and it was so interesting.
Yeah, this ship is designed by Imagineers. So if you think of how they designed the parks, they designed the ship. Yes, it still needs to be a classic and functional cruise ship, but they designed the ship to function in certain ways as well. And they are telling stories. The Imagineers, if nothing else, they are storytellers, and they're telling stories throughout the ship, even if you don't really notice it right off the bat. They even do use forced perspective in areas to make things look greater than what they really are, just like they do in the parks. It was really interesting. And if you do get on a cruise ship and have the time, I would suggest you doing that at some point.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
So anything else?
I'm sure I could go on and on, but
we could go on forever.
I know. It's been a long podcast already. So what about you?
Yeah, I just want to finish out again, and you mentioned it already, the Cruise Director Morning Show featuring Ashley and Mike. It was the highlight of our mornings.
Gosh, yes.
Sometimes we would watch it as we're getting ready multiple times because it was just so entertaining. As the cruise became that much crazier, they became that much more hilarious.
Right.
You could tell it was a blast.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I know I found myself because I'd have to watch it again because I would actually be laughing out loud and miss some more of what they said. And it's not like, I need to know what activity they just said. No, they were just bantering and I have to hear every single piece of it. I mean, it was so funny.
And they worked so well together. You already alluded to that earlier. Mentioning it, every cruise line does this. They have a morning show to kind of go over the activities of the day, and some are better than others. This was by far the best morning show on a cruise line we've ever seen. Thank you, Ashley. Thank you, Mike, and Aaron too, who would pop in as well. Just so much fun. And Dave and Dino and everything. I mean, every part of it.
That's right. The weather report.
For those of you,
the weather.
It's hot. That was the weather. Again, these are inside jokes for somebody who they have no idea what we're talking about.
Maybe we should edit these out.
But no, I think it's fun. It was just totally enjoyable. So many great things happened on this cruise. It was truly a sailing we will never, ever forget. Right. It was a blast. It was a vacation. It was, frightening at times
Yeah.
in some ways. It was an adventure. We laughed a lot. We had a great time. And it's all a credit to, yes, the guests as well that were with us, because we had a great group of guests with us, but mostly to the Disney Wonder cast and crew, right up starting with Captain Henry on down to the guy who washes the dishes or whatever.
Right.
Everybody did their job over and above what they needed to do. It was phenomenal. Thank you, Disney Wonder.
Yay!
We hope you're hearing this. We hope the brass is hearing this, because thank you so much. This is our love letter to you. We really appreciate everything you did for us.
I can't say it any better. They really are wonderful.
So yeah, that wraps that up. I know we've gone long so far, and we really don't have many Disney stories of the week this week, because really anything that Disney has put out, and they're not putting out a lot right now because there's just so much news and it's all secondary to what's going on around the world. But there are a couple stories that I kind of want to get to really, really quickly here. And the first being that it was announced today that Disney and Pixar will be releasing Onward early. As a matter of fact, they've just released it early to give everyone something extra to watch while you're maybe hunkered down, or you're self-quarantining, whatever, if you're just kind of making sure and staying home to keep everybody safe, whatever the case may be. Tonight it's out for digital download, and it will arrive on Disney Plus in 2 weeks on Friday, April 3rd. And we enjoyed it very much, and we're looking forward to watching it again.
Yeah, I was really excited to hear about that, and that was really special. So thank you, Disney.
Secondly, it looks like we may know, it's a rumor, but we may know who will be playing a very popular role in season 2 of The Mandalorian. This from slashfilm.com. They say, we have exclusively learned that Rosario Dawson will appear in The Mandalorian season 2, and are excited to report that she will be playing a fan favorite character previously only seen in Star Wars animated productions. Yes, Dawson will be playing a live action version of Ahsoka Tano.
Wow.
Now, again, this hasn't been confirmed by Lucasfilm yet, so we don't know that this is true, but I find it very interesting.
Yeah.
And if you don't know who Ahsoka Tano is, she was Anakin Skywalker's Jedi Padawan apprentice who appeared in Star Wars: The Clone Wars. If you're watching The Clone Wars now, you'll know she's
see her. Yeah.
obviously prominent in that. She was also in Star Wars Rebels. This will be the first time the character appeared in a live action movie or television show. As far as Rosario Dawson, you may know her, but she's done a ton of things. She was in Wrench, where she got an award for that. But more recently, she was in when Marvel had their TV series with Netflix. She had a recurring character in that. She played Claire Temple in Luke Cage and Iron Fist and The Defenders, Jessica Jones, etc. So she had so you may even recognize her from that. But she's been in a lot of stuff. She's done some voiceover work for some of the Marvel cartoons, for the animated series and stuff. So
exciting.
Yeah, it is very exciting. So that's really cool.
Yeah, hope it comes true.
Hope it comes true. So that's it for our Disney stories of the week. As I said, they're going to be really quick, but we never leave you. Even when we were away, we never left you without giving you some sort of tip that might help you on your next vacation. And we always start with Michelle, one, because she's wonderful, fantastic. She loves to thank every Disney Wonder crew member she could come across, but also she just has the very best tip. So let's quickly get to it. Here is Michelle's tip of the week.
How sweet. Thank you, sweetie. So my tip, I'm going to go keep it with the cruising theme, and it has to do with the internet. And one of the things that it started to realize throughout the cruise ship by hearing some people talk is they don't realize that on the day you board, you can actually get and sign up for a minimal free package. You have to do it on the day you board. You can't do it the next day or any other day. So my tip is, when you get on board, go on and they have the paperwork in the room already. It's called Connect at Sea. It has the login instructions, and I mean, sure, if you want to choose to add on more, you can always add on more later, or you can buy a bigger package. But if you weren't planning to really spend money on the internet and you want to have something that you could if need be, check on emails or send out a tweet or something like that, they do have a free package that is available to you. So don't forget to do that. And the other, I'm going to do a twofer here. Twofer. The other tip related to also electronics is, and I know everybody talks about downloading the app. We talked about that recently. But one of the things that I had forgotten about, and I didn't remember it right away, is when you are on board and you are using the app, then you get to see every day, even in advance. Of course, in our case, things are changing. So
all the time.
I know. But typically on the cruises, you can go and say, okay, so it's day 1, and you can look at day 4 and see what activities, and you can, star the things that you want to include and get reminders of. The other thing that you can do when you're looking at that is do a filter. So if you just want to look at movies, you can just filter movies or movies in theater. If you only want to look at, what's going on for the adult section, and you do that every time you turn it on.
Certain lounge,
right?
The case may be.
Like I'll give you an example. We were it was after our meal, and we thought, we want to go to a lounge. Where's some of the entertainment? And so rather than having to pull out the paper one and look things up, we could do the app and do filter adults only and see instantly what's going on. If you have kids, you can do it by age group. You can do it by all for all ages. You can do multiple things, but it's on there. It says filter. When you pull up the day's schedule, there's a little thing, and I am going to put on the web page what that looks like, a picture of it. But just keep that in mind. If you have a cruise you're coming onto in the future, because we know it's not going to be near future, but in the future.
Hopefully somewhat near future.
Right. Keep in mind that there are a lot of great tools. One is the Connect at Sea, that you can get the free package only on embarkation day, and you can use filters on the app.
Yeah, even without the internet. By the way, the app works on board without the internet. It does connect to the ship's Wi-Fi, but you don't get charged for using the ship's Wi-Fi. You just can't connect to the internet or whatever.
And you can use it free. You can use the internet free for any Disney site. So Disney Cruise Line site, Disney World, Disneyland,
Disney Vacation Club.
You can access those without needing any internet package. You can just access that all the time. It's not fast.
Not at all. It doesn't always go through because it's so slow.
Yeah. But you can do that, while you're on board without having any charges.
Yep, exactly. So as I said, Michelle always has the very best tips. So now let's get quickly to my tip of the week. And look, it's crazy right now. I know that a lot of not everybody, but a lot of people are scared out there.
It's a new normal.
Even if you're not scared, you're hunkered down. Things are different. Vacations are changing or being canceled or whatever the case may be. But, please remember that eventually this will pass.
Mm-hmm.
Again, like Michelle said, it will be a new normal, but this will eventually pass. Eventually the parks will reopen. The cruises will sail again. And I want you to remember that when you do finally get on that vacation, going to the parks, once you can get on that Disney cruise, hopefully we've inspired you to eventually take a Disney cruise, when you do get on there, I want you to do a couple of things for me. And I think this will be good for you. You remember this time that's going on right now. When you get out there to the parks, when you get on this Disney cruise line, I want you to go out there and I want you to dance like no one else is watching, just like we did at the silent disco. I want you to sing along like you're alone in your car.
That's a great idea.
Because you know what? It's tough right now. And, we're going to get through this, but you're going to want to let that all out eventually when you get your final vacation out there, and it'll just make that vacation that much more enjoyable to just go out there and put everything into it. Dance. Even if you're a terrible dancer, have a good time out there and dance. If you're a terrible singer, I'm a terrible singer. I sung away when I was at the silent disco and I didn't care. Remember, when you're out there, if you're concerned about being embarrassed or people judging you, will remember that virtually all these people that are around you will never see again in your life. So who cares what they think about you? And even if they do think a certain way about you, that's on them.
Right.
You're having a great time. You're enjoying yourself. If you're smiling, if you're laughing, if you're singing, if you're dancing, you're having a wonderful time. So do it to your heart's content. Do it as much as possible. Again, it's scary right now when this all gets done, because it will eventually get done and things will eventually get better. Find the joy and share it. Enjoy it. You're on vacation. Make it the best vacation possible.
That's a great tip, honey. Actually, you got a better tip than me this time, many times. But no, that is, I think that's, speaks to also the wonderment of the Disney, whether you're talking parks, restaurants, cruise ships, vacation club. They actually give you permission to be the kid at heart, to have that fun, to dress silly, I know that there was a couple times on the cruise ship that some of my outfits may have been a little bit out there, a little,
not at all,
but I mean, you can wear wacky socks, and you can wear ears to dinner, formal night and things like that. You can, do things that you would normally not feel comfortable in public, but at a Disney related event or location, they give you that permission. They allow you to be that child. And I think your tip of saying really taking advantage of that fully and really feeling joy throughout your total body and existence is a great tip. It's an amazing tip.
I think it's important. I think, and you listen to this podcast because probably you're a Disney fan. Hopefully you're a fan of us too, but you're probably a Disney fan. And I think that's part of the joy of Disney is that, it brings out that kid in you. We live in such adult lives. We have to go to work. We have to, most of the time we have to go to work. We have to do these things. We have to kind of, adult, as they say. It's nice to every once in a while be able to break away and be that kid and just enjoy yourself a good time. And Disney does allow you to do that. And so take advantage of that.
Yeah.
Take advantage of that if you get the chance. So that's it for this week. Thanks for joining us. Next week, we've talked about it for weeks now. And the next episode, we'll finally get to it. Yes, it's going to be our Ask Us Anything episode. I think it's perfect for right now. People are hunkered down, and this could be actually really entertaining. So we need your help. Send us your questions. Even better, if you want to record your question in either an audio or a video format, send them to us. We'll play them on the air and then we'll answer your questions. However you want to do it. If you want to write it down, that's fine. We'll read them and answer them as well. Just email them to us at HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com, or you can send them via direct message to social media on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram. Oh, you can't do it on Pinterest, I don't think, but Facebook and Instagram at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. Your questions could be about anything, Disney parks, Disney Cruise Line, Run Disney, etc., or it can just be about us or about the podcast, whatever you want to ask. Now, if you get too personal, we may weed some of them out, but we're going to try and answer as many as we can about everything. And we're going to try and be as much of an open book as possible. If you ever wondered about anything about us, about the show, or just to have questions about Disney that you think we might be able to help you with, please send them to us.
Right. Ask us how we met.
Yeah, some of you already know that. But some of you may not. So that might be an interesting question. And so we'll see who gets to that one first.
Yeah. Ask about the parks.
Yeah. I want to hear some. I know you're all creative. You are a creative person. I know you're going to come up with some fun, interesting questions that are really going to challenge us. And I'm looking forward to answering that. I think it's going to be a really fun episode. And I think you're going to have some fun during this week, especially, if you are self-quarantining or whatever the case may be, coming up with this, and just send it to us. And again, it can be audio, it can be video, whatever the case may be, and it can be just written. And we'll have a lot of fun this week together.
Yeah, social distancing with fun.
Yes, social distancing across the internet, across the podcast. We'll have a lot of fun with it for sure. And it's your chance to get on the show.
Yes, that's right.
Yeah. So I appreciate you joining us today. In the future, you can find us most everywhere you get podcasts. The best place to find us, HyperionAdventuresPodcast.com. And while you're there, go ahead and sign up for the newsletter.
Right. Do that. It'll give you some early access to information of things coming up, some tips, and you will love it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I hope you love it.
Yeah. And we don't give that email address out to anybody. That's just us sending you something.
That is just us. just for us to connect with you in a better way. And also, as we said already, you can connect with us on Twitter at Hyperion Podcast, Facebook, Instagram, and Pinterest at Hyperion Adventures Podcast. And one more time, that email address, HyperionAdventuresPodcast@gmail.com. So we've run long. That's it. Thank you for listening to the Hyperion Adventures Podcast. We look forward to sharing some time with you again next week. Until that time, I'm Tom.
I'm Michelle.
And we hope that you have a magical week.